alleged mastermind Ntuthuko Shoba will tomorrow learn his fate in the Tshegofatso Pule murder case. He's accused of organizing the killing of his then heavily pregnant girlfriend. Pule was found shot and hanging from a tree in Durban Deep on Gauteng's West Rand. That killing taking place in 2020. Well, for more on those proceedings and the trial, we're joined by Newzroom Afrika reporter Linda Mnisi. He's been watching this trial for us since the very onset of this case. Also joining the conversation, Pule family representative Tumisang Katake and self-confessed murderer Muzikayise Malephane's friend Mthokozisi Nkosi. Good evening to all of you, gentlemen, because we've ended up with with a conversation of only gentlemen, and it's a pleasure to have you both coming into the studio. I really appreciate your time. Linda, you've been tracking the story from the very onset, so I think it's fair to begin with you to give us a state of this case and what we have seen in this trial ahead of tomorrow, which is really a big day.
Yeah, so you'll remember, Kathy, that Ntuthuko Shoba is facing charges of premeditated murder and, of course, defeating the ends of justice. So the state here had to prove that there was a level of planning that went into Tshegofatso Pule's murder. And, of course, it brought a number of aspects to it. And, at the center of this case, you'll remember Muzikayise Malephane, who confessed to killing Tshegofatso Pule, being the center or the star witness, if you may call it, trying to give details in terms of what exactly happened. And he did indicate that there was a level of planning. Ntuthuko Shoba came to his house and told him about this, what he wanted to happen, where Pule would be killed and how she would be killed, that's according to Malephane. And ultimately saying that, she wanted her hung from a tree, and that would look like a suicide. But of course, the details coming out that in fact there was a slight change to the plan, because ultimately the postmortem results showed that she died from a gunshot wound. All of those things. But also centered to this case is also the issue around the 2 dates, Kathy. The 29th of May, when the first murder was, or rather the murder was initially supposed to happen, which is the interview before, the 6 days prior to her murder at McDonald's. She did not pitch, and that's why it did not happen. Muzikayise says he was supposed to pick her up. Tshepiso Tsita says this was supposed to happen. She was supposed to go there, but she did not go because she received a message from an unknown woman who told her to get into a grey Jeep. Now, how Ntuthuko features in this particular day is the disputed cell phone, right, that made a call to Muzikayise Malephane. The state is saying this phone belonged to Ntuthuko Shoba, and then ultimately the day of the murder, when of course earlier they were together and later he came to pick her up. And I want us to take a listen to what the state was basing its case on.
My strongest argument, or rather my submission to this honorable court, and I also took it up during his cross-examination, my lord, the fact that he claimed on this aspect that he did not know as to who called him, my lord. I there again rely on this disputed number, because this honorable court will see that at 22:01, when they went out on the evening of the June 2020, my lord, 4th of June, he then returns, my lord, at 20:01 they go back, but they then go out at 20:06, my lord. But 22:04, that disputed number called Mr. Malephane, and then he arrives there at 22:06. So again, there the state, my lord, relies on that aspect again, that if this honorable court finds that there is no distance between Mr. Shoba and that disputed number, then that factor is indicative that he knew who was going to come and pick her up.
Linda, the reliance of cell phone evidence during this case has been crucial for the state, and as far as trying to paint a chronological order of events that would somehow paint a picture and link Shoba to what was happening in as far as then the way in which this murder was being planned. Have they been able to do that successfully?
You'll remember, Kathy, that they had, about 2 witnesses who came to testify about, the actual cell phones and, the base locations. and actually where the cell phones were. I remember one witness saying that, in fact, it's quite interesting how, this disputed number, which is also not registered in Ntuthuko Shoba's name, is found in various locations where his registered cell number is, and ultimately, also making calls to Muzikayise Malephane, or either Malephane making calls to it. In fact, the prosecutor using words like, it seems as though when Malephane calls this disputed number, it prompts Ntuthuko Shoba to then call Tshegofatso Pule with his registered number. So it's the state's case that, in fact, it's too much of a coincidence that this disputed number is found on various locations where you are. The issue also around the 29th of May, where in fact, they had planned to go to Cresta to buy the baby's clothes. The following day, his registered phone pings at a base location in Cresta, but the very same disputed number also pings at a base location in Cresta.
All right. So that's just a roundup of a part of what has come out of this trial in terms of the merits of the case that is being looked at. When we'll continue, we'll hear then from the family representative, particularly of Tshegofatso Pule, to find out what the process of watching and being part of this trial has been like for the family. We also hear from Muzikayise Malephane's friend, Mthokozisi Nkosi. Do stay with us. 11 News at Prime, we continue our conversation looking ahead to what is an important case tomorrow in the murder trial, which relates to the killing of Tshegofatso Pule. Our reporter Linda Mnisi, who's been watching this case with us in studio, Pule's uncle, Tumisang Katake, and friend to Muzikayise Malephane, Mthokozisi Nkosi. Tumela, let me bring you in here. There's been about 2 years now that the family has had to not only process what has happened, but I think to be able to sit through court and try and piece this puzzle together for yourselves. How would you describe that process?
Thank you, Oskith, and good evening to the viewers at home. Taxing. It's been taxing emotionally, psychologically, especially the Shoba matter, to the extent that we never anticipated as a family. You would realize that from the moment when we buried Tshegofatso on the 11th of June, 4 days later, Muzikayise Malephane gets arrested. We hardly ever mourned Tshegofatso during that 4-day period. And last year, around February 2021, when the case against Mr. Malephane was concluded, immediately the following Monday, we had to go to court to resume with the case against Mr. Shoba. And to this date, we've been traveling that journey. And our emotions at court sometimes were provoked to the extent that you could not blame family members. The highlight of the event was when the video of Tshegofatso Pule's last moments were played at court after the application for the video footage to be played in court to be submitted as exhibit was granted by Judge Wilson. So you could actually tell from the family members that this is the moment that we've all been trying to avoid. But at the same time, if we're saying we're seeking justice for Tshegofatso, the kind of pain that we have to go through, it's those moments that would really define us as a family and would really want us to come together as a family. But again, the other important thing that I would like to stress, especially from the family side, is the support we've been getting throughout South Africa, even abroad. A call to say we are with you, be strong. I remember I even answered the email from as far as the US, where the lady was saying that why can't they charge for 2 counts of murder because Tshegofatso was pregnant. I even had to explain the reasons why they couldn't charge 2 counts of murder. But as a family, it's been tough. It's been tough for Skith.
When you hear the details and the messages that are read out in court, exchanges between Tshegofatso and Shoba, retrospectively, as a family, and particularly as an uncle, do you think that there are conversations that you wish you would be able to have with her now, knowing what you know?
I had a conversation with my sister one day to say I sometimes feel like we failed Tshegofatso. Maybe let me speak particularly about me. Because when her mother passed on, we were staying together. And I remember when we last saw her alive at Garden City as she was about to be operated. Little did we know that hours later she would pass on. She says, listen, I need you to look after my kids, more particularly Tshegofatso and Poloso. I said, no, Smakina, you will come back. We'll look after them together. And hours later, she passed on. And at her age, at that time, she was 28. She's an old woman to distinguish right from wrong. And she's an old woman to make her choices about life. But you feel you became too distant from her to the extent that she couldn't even approach you to tell you about the challenges that she was going through as a woman, particularly from her man in a relationship or the father of her unborn child at that time. It plays regularly on my mind to say maybe I could have warned her to say, listen, rather get out of this guy. Forget about Huisamolato. Forget about this guy ever giving you money for rides to Uber to pay for the doctor or to even buy you medication that you need to take or supplements that you need to take as a pregnant woman. We are here for you as a family. Maybe that type of conversation we had with her as a family, we wouldn't be here. But at the same time, we need to trust our own kids to grow up, to know that there are decisions that they can take in life, as tough as they may be, but they need to live with them. But dying is not one of them.
Mthokozisi, let me come to you. I wonder the kind of questions that you've had to deal with over the last 2 years as somebody who is the friend of a man who's already been convicted in terms of this murder that has taken place.
Yes, thank you for having me in the studio. What I can say is that on the first day when I heard about Tshegofatso's murder, I asked myself and some of my friends, what's happening? Who could have done this terrible thing to a pregnant woman? So later on, I found out that my friend is involved in that murder. So I couldn't believe it because I've known Muzikayise Malephane for a very, very long time. And growing up together, he was such a humble person, full of laughter. And so I couldn't believe he would be capable of doing such a terrible thing. So I never thought that could happen to some of us or to one of my friends.
Have you had the opportunity of speaking with him since his conviction? And as a friend, what are the kind of things that you say in those conversations? Again, being mindful of the fact that we live in a South Africa where gender-based violence is a scourge, and we're constantly told, that men need to speak out and call out their friends that are perpetrators of these crimes, and yet you don't anticipate that one of your closest friends is somebody who would have committed one of the brutal murders against a woman of this country.
To tell you the truth, I never got a chance to speak to him, to confront him, to ask him what really came to his mind by that time. So I'm still asking myself, I still have a lot of questions towards him, to ask him, how could you do such a thing? How could you do such a terrible thing? What was it that was short in your upbringing or in your life that you could chase after money or be convinced by a guy like Shoba to do his dirty work? Yeah.
And in as far as his family is concerned, have you had any contact with them?
I do speak to Muzikayise's mother, and you could see and I could feel the pain that she's in. we talk, but he doesn't want to talk too much about this thing because I think it brings a lot of pain. So I do comfort her. I do tell her that everything will be okay. Just hold on. And what I'm hoping for is that Muzikayise do what's best for her mother, and I think that will wash away the pain that the mother is feeling right now.
And what is that?
To look at his sentence, carry on studying there, participate in every good thing that they're doing.
Linda, in as far as what the outcome of this case is likely to be, we saw just, at the conclusion of the trial, a request for it to be reopened over video footage. And that piece of video footage seems to be critical in terms of determining where this case is going to go.
Yeah, Kathy, you'll remember that there was a conversation or talks around what could have happened in the moment when Tshegofatso went into that vehicle. I just want us to bring that video up. You would have seen they came out of the complex and then they went to the car, but then he stays behind. Ntuthuko Shoba stays behind in the video, and you see Tshegofatso speaking there in the car. But shortly after that, what you see is Ntuthuko Shoba going back. You see there she's talking. She's at the car, and then suddenly he goes back. But there's a question around the times, because when this car arrived, Kathy, it arrived at 6 minutes past 10 in the evening. And then suddenly this footage jumps. It jumps to 9 minutes past 10, leaving out questions around, in that 3 minutes, between 6 minutes past 10 and 9 minutes past 10, what could have happened? Muzikayise says during that time, Tshegofatso was very reluctant to go into the vehicle. I spoke to Ntuthuko. We spoke. We tried to convince her. I told her, no, I'll take you home. She went into the car. But Ntuthuko Shoba says, I couldn't have spent 3 minutes outside. That's his response to that allegation by Muzikayise, that I couldn't have spent 3 minutes outside. But now the question is, what will the judge make of the fact that there is a jump cut and it's unaccounted for? Because if the judge then believes, which is something that, was discussed in court, that Ntuthuko Shoba did not see who was driving that vehicle, because that's what he said. He did not see who was driving that vehicle, despite, in fact, Kathy, having been with Muzikayise Malephane on the same day earlier that day. So he said he did not see who was driving that vehicle because the person who was driving that vehicle had a mask on and had a cap on. So he couldn't have interacted with that person. He couldn't have spent 3 minutes. So it then becomes important, because did he see him? And if he did not see him, then what does it answer then around the questions of the plotting of the murder, the picking up, and everything of that sort?
Tumisang, let me come to you and ask about, in matters of this nature, and we're going to see this depending on what the outcome of tomorrow's cases will be, but there will be an opportunity in all likelihood for the family to state a case in as far as what it believes justice to be in this instance. Has there been an opportunity for you at all to speak with Shoba or his family? Have there been any attempts in that regard?
None whatsoever. There has been quite many opportune times that availed themselves to them. Well, according to where we are as a family. From the moment they heard that Tshegofatso was murdered, and this is the person who was expecting their unborn grandchild, niece, nephew, whatever the case could have been. And if indeed at all Mr. Shoba was excited about the pregnancy of Tshegofatso and they're expecting the baby into this world. Secondly, even up to the time when the funeral arrangements were made, and maybe allegedly, let's just take what Mr. Shoba was saying, that it is true. He was threatened by some of my family members, which I still highly dispute. They could have sent a delegate at our home to say, listen, we are from the Shoba's family. They couldn't come for whatever obvious reasons could have been at that time. But however, how do we help as a family? Not only you guys have lost a soul, but even us, we lost the unborn grandchild. Even from the moment when Ntuthuko Shoba was arrested, it was the time when they were supposed to reach out to say, listen, we're here for our child, but we don't condone what has happened. If indeed he is guilty, let him go, save time. Every time when we meet at court, there's been many opportunities whereby they could have reached out, but it has never happened. So, as a family, from where we stand, we don't think we can welcome that. I strongly believe that they support their son and believe that their son is innocent. We believe that their son has had a hand in this thing. Even from the moment Muzikayise Malephane was arrested, we still had suspicion that Mr. Shoba is involved. And they were confirmed on the day when he was arrested that indeed he is involved.
Well, quickly running out of time, your expectations for tomorrow, what do you want to see happen?
Nothing less than a guilty verdict.
All right, let's leave it there for tonight. Let me thank you all for coming into a studio, for having this conversation. Of course, Linda Mnisi will be live for us from the courts from very early on in the morning. You can expect coverage on that particular court case right here on Newzroom Afrika. Valen is standing by with a final look at your sport for us tonight.
This tree refused to